this next story is one of those stories that just talking about it gets me really upset. And let me just warn you, I'm going to be using some adult terms in this story, so if you have kids watching, maybe you don't want them to see this, I don't know, but hey, it is what it is. Please put up that picture. Thank you very much. What a beautiful, beautiful lady. This girl had dreams, but we would never get to see them come to pass. You know why? Because someone decided we have to make sure that she remains a virgin, so we have to mutilate her. Female genital mutilation. So they did that, and guess what? She died. This happened in Sierra Leone, and a minister actually said that the death cause is natural. And I need to thank a viewer by the name Alimatu Demoneken from Sierra Leone that sent this to me. You know, I still ask myself the same question. For how long would Africans practice such a procedure that has no benefit whatsoever, but can be detrimental in a million ways? First of all, many people don't really know what female genital mutilation is, and that's why till today it is still very prominent in 28 African countries. 28! By the way, it has been legally banned in so many of these countries, but it is still being practiced. FGM is not circumcision, as some people would say. Some people would say, oh, this is the equivalent of male circumcision. No, please, it is not. In case you don't know, sometimes they completely remove the labia and the clitoris. That is the equivalent of cutting off the male genitalia. Circumcision is actually the wrong word, because they are not circumcising these girls, they are mutilating them. I honestly think that it's time for Africans to start cutting off men's sexual organ so that we can make sure that the men that our daughters would marry would be virgins. How would you like that? It's like somebody chopping off a part of your body, like to chop off your hand or to chop off your leg. And this is even more traumatic because they don't use any form of anesthesia before they cut these girls. The second thing that they do to these girls is to sew up their genitalia, and that is after they use a knife or a blade or another sharp object to cut the labia and the clitoris. And then they would use thread and needle to sew up the vagina, leaving a very, very small hole for them to urinate and for blood to pass during menstruation. Now let me tell you what happens after. They will tie these girls up for between 10 to 14 days. Imagine somebody tying you up and you are not able to move or go anywhere for 2 weeks in order to ensure that the thread stays in place. And then you know what happened to these girls? First of all, they lose a lot of blood, and so many of them have bled to death. For those that survived, starting from that day, they can no longer urinate like normal people. They go through a lot of pain just to urinate. Remember I told you now they only have a small hole. They are never able to let out all the urine. So they have urine retention, which leads to all kinds of infections. Also, during menstruation, blood cannot pass naturally as it's supposed to, which also leads to all kinds of infections. And the night of their wedding, the man would force himself in. Keep in mind, they sold these girls up several years ago. The thread is still there, and then the guy forces himself in. Like, how barbaric can you be? What do you think would happen? She's in pain all over again. Many of these girls never enjoy sex. As a matter of fact, instead of enjoying it, many of these girls experience pain during sexual intercourse. And let me tell you, sex is supposed to be mutually enjoyed. I watched one woman who said that even after having children, she didn't get over the trauma of FGM. She didn't even like seeing her children because she felt like she was raped each time their father slept with her to conceive those children. Speaking of which, do you know that FGM also causes complications during childbirth? Because the vagina is not able to expand as it's supposed to in order for the baby to come out with no complications. So a lot of these women experience difficulty during childbirth. And do you know how many women have died during childbirth because of this? Several women. And let me just say that the process of FGM has the possibility of transmitting HIV as well as STDs to these girls. Without even sleeping with anybody, they already have STDs. The blades that they use, the knives, the scissors. In fact, when I see some pictures of some of the objects that some people use, I wonder if they were trying to kill these girls. And to be honest with you, they actually kill them inside. So many of these guys are excited that they are marrying a virgin. He has no idea that he's also about to contract HIV as well as STD, because the symptoms may not manifest before the time that the girl gets married. And all these side effects is besides the psychological effect, the trauma, how hard it is for these girls to trust anybody after that, the post-traumatic stress disorder, the anxiety, the depression that they go through, even memory loss. I heard about a lady that they used knife to cut her as a child, and since then she runs whenever she sees a knife, even though she's now in her 30s. If she goes to visit somebody and they are trying to prepare food for her and she sees knife, she runs. She doesn't want to eat their their food, she just leaves. She can no longer trust anybody with a knife. You may wonder why we subject our girls to this practice. Well, it's a practice that began to ensure that women do not enjoy sex, so that they will not desire sex, so that they won't be sleeping around, so that they can be virgins. And also it is to subjugate women and to control their sexuality and their virginity. In other words, this is just to control women. In many societies, if a woman is not mutilated, if she's not circumcised, people don't want to associate with her. And in so many cases, she's ostracized. The belief is she must be sleeping around. First of all, let me talk to men, because you are the ones that can end this devilish practice. And that's mainly because you are the reason that they are doing this. You are the reason that they are doing this to these girls.
We are not happy to marry a woman that has not been circumcised.
Just like this man, there are so many African men that want to marry a virgin. But you can't force somebody to remain a virgin by doing this. You are actually destroying her life because of your own selfish desire. What if all women also insist that they will only marry virgins? How many men would be virgins? Or is it okay for men to sleep around but women are not supposed to? I'm not saying that people should sleep around, whether male or female. I'm just saying that it is wrong for you to destroy another person's life for your own selfish interest. And by the way, some of these men that want to marry a virgin, they are not virgins themselves. That means they are sleeping around with some girls. And I keep asking, so is it okay for some girls to sleep around with you because you would marry a virgin, but it's not okay for some girls to sleep around? I'm so confused. If you want girls to be virgins, please educate them on the dangers of sleeping around. But for God's sake, educate boys as well, educate guys as well, and educate those grown men who are still sleeping around. This is not what makes a girl a virgin, so stop this barbaric act in your communities. Now, what I don't understand is why those women keep taking their daughters through the same trauma that they went through. I wanted to say that maybe it's because some of these women are not educated or they are not exposed, but do you guys know that they now practice this thing in the US and in Europe? In fact, everywhere that we have African immigrants, some of these African immigrants either do it for their girls here in a foreign land, or sometimes they will tell the girl, you're going home for Christmas, you're going home for the holiday, and the girl has no idea what is waiting for her upon arrival, and guess what? They will cut her before she comes back. Which is why the Center for Disease Control here in the US estimates that between 150,000 and 200,000 girls here in the US are at risk of being cut. So many of these girls, they will be sent home and they will cut them. Some of them, they will cut them right here in the US. In Arizona, for example, 98% of the Somali women that are being treated at the Refugee Women's Health Clinic have been circumcised. They've been cut. I decided to talk about this because it is still being practiced in different parts of Africa till today. Do you know that 98% of Somali women have undergone female genital mutilation? 98%. In Guinea, it is 96% of women that have been cut, even though it is outlawed. Yet this thing is being practiced. Also in Djibouti, it is 93% of the women that have been cut. In Egypt, it is 91%. As a matter of fact, it is now the medical practitioners in Egypt that are cutting these girls, those that are supposed to know better. There is the assumption that if the doctors do it, it will limit the likelihood of infection. No, they still go through the pain. They still have difficulty when they're trying to have a child. They still don't enjoy sex. They still have trauma. They still go through depression. It still has a lot of psychological effect on them, even though the doctors are the ones doing it for them in Egypt. But as one of the Egyptian officials said, they do this to these girls in order to reduce women's desire for sex.
We are a population whose men suffer from sexual weakness, which is evident because Egypt is among the biggest consumers of sexual stimulants. If we stop female genital mutilation, we will need strong men. It's good because it reduces a woman's sexual appetite.
Can you imagine that mentality? And this is a politician. In Mali and Eritrea, 89% of the women have been cut. In Sierra Leone and Sudan, 88% of the female population have been cut. In Nigeria, 30% of the female population have been cut. FGM, by the way, has been outlawed in so many African countries. In Guinea, in Eritrea, in Gambia, in Nigeria, in some states, in Sudan, in Djibouti, and so many other African countries. But the problem is the law is not being enforced. So please don't just listen to this episode. If you know of any community where this is still being done, please try to educate them about the consequences. If there's any government official that is watching this episode, please do your part. The first thing to do is to educate people, especially in rural parts, because so many of these women, they see it as a rite of passage to womanhood. So I hope that the government would educate people. And if you are from any country where FGM is yet to be banned, like in Sierra Leone where this girl died, please, it is time for the government of Sierra Leone to ban FGM and enforce the law against FGM. It is time. They need to start arresting people. And so for this lady that died, and for so many others that have died because of this devilish act, may their souls rest in peace. And for those of you that went through it and you've suffered for so long because of this, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. I cannot even imagine what you've been through. You guys know I don't know much. Guess what? I'm just keeping it real.